So how do you read last night's results,
Well,
and what does it say for Democrats in terms of being steadfast and focused on November?
Well, first of all, what was your number in 2010?
Okay, my number in 2010
as RZ chair, what was
can I get a look? Can I get there right here? 63, baby. 63. Now if you can pick up 1,000 state legislative seats on top of that, come talk to me.
I don't know about the state legislative seats, but because the gerrymandering is so bad. But I think, and seriously, and I didn't think your number would be challenged anytime soon. But if you look at the trend line, right? Last night wasn't just an outlier.
Right.
It was very much the trend line that we've seen since Donald Trump's won office. And you know this as well as anyone. If an incumbent is not sitting in a plus 20 seat and is not safe,
that's right.
You've got a lot of seats that are all of a sudden in play, right?
Yep.
And the truth of the matter is American people think elections are a real big deal and these dramatic shifts. But the truth of the matter is there's typically only maybe 25, 30 seats really in play. Mm-hmm. You're lucky to get 30 seats that are truly in play in a midterm election. I think you're clearly going to have more than 30 seats in play this midterm election because of this trend line. So I've
said 40 from the beginning.
So I think you're right.
When I did the analysis, I came up with the number 40.
Here's your X factor. Your X factor is the redistricting that Republicans have undertaken to try to gerrymander more seats, and we've talked about this before. What you have to do is you have to make incumbent Republicans less safe in order to spread that around. So that's the big X factor.
But I would even say, Jackie, to that those redrawn lines for those Republicans, you still don't know how the voters are going to vote in those districts. Those margins can be close.
Right. And, I mean, haven't some of the redistricting efforts essentially canceled each other out at the end of the day?
We don't know that yet. I think it says yes. However, again, if you're taking Republican seats that have been solid Republican seats, better than plus 20, and you're all of a sudden saying, oh, well, we'll be safe at plus 10 or plus 8, and we see a trend line that you're not safe at plus 10 or plus 8, I think we could challenge that number that you had. And it's their own fault.
It's their own fault.
Well, I mean, what Cornel is breaking down, frankly, is that you can play with the numbers all you want. You can try to gerrymander these states to the high heavens. And I mean, I think the National Democratic Redistricting Committee would say that they have done a lot of work to undo many of those gerrymanders and challenge them, which is at one point Wisconsin was the most gerrymandered state in the country. And the work that has happened in Wisconsin has made it more competitive. And then there's been a focus on elections in that state, from state legislative races all the way down to the state Supreme Court races, which we've seen the effects of that work over the last couple of cycles. But what Cornel is putting his finger on here, and I think is a good reminder for the viewers, the voters have the final say here. The people at the polls have the final say, and this is why, you know, Michael Steele, y'all know, a Democratic voter specifically can turn into a pundit very quickly, especially in a Democratic primary. And I think instead of voters parsing out like, oh, who do I think could win? Maybe this person. Vote for who you want to vote for. Show up, turn out at the polls, and that is the person that will win. And I think that the Republican Party right now in this country is very scared of that fact, which is why they're doing all these other things outside of the gerrymandering, the executive orders, the about the mail-in ballots, the threatening ICE at the polls. They are trying to scare people because I think they know that if folks show up to the polls in droves, they're concerned that those folks might not be voting for them.
I think that's right, Cornel, and I'd like you to respond to that. In addition, sort of tack on to that, the idea that, and this is where I was going with Jackie, is, you know, I can draw a line and I can put the three of us in that district, right? And we represent, you know, obviously 1,000, 2,000 voters in that district each. Still have no idea how those voters are going to vote. Because of the externalities that have occurred in this cycle, leading up to this cycle, and now we're engaged in a war, which will be playing out despite what Donald Trump thinks this fall. Gas prices will be as high, maybe down $1,
gas
10 cents.
Still up, Michael Steele. Gas is still up.
I said by November, maybe down 10 cents.
It won't matter.
It won't matter. But that's my point. It won't matter.
No, it's built in. Right, you're right. We don't know how voters will vote. However, what you've laid out are the tea leaves for us, right? Tell us how voters are going to vote. voters are deeply dissatisfied with this war, especially independent voters are deeply dissatisfied with this war. They're deeply dissatisfied with affordability, and they're deeply dissatisfied with stagnant wages. They're deeply dissatisfied with job growth. They're deeply dissatisfied with ICE. So I don't know, Michael. You've been around more long than I have. Maybe Democrats should just make this a midterm or referendum on the incumbent. Crazy idea.
It's a crazy idea.